radio has changed so dramatically since from when we were kids. You know,
Yes.
I have a certain like soft spot for radio from when I was a kid, because you could hear a little bit of everything back then. Certain radio stations would play easy listening, or some places would play a rock channel. And like we used to get the station out of Montreal when the moon was right, that would play literally anything. You'd go from, you know, a Rush song to a Duran Duran song to a Crosby, Stills and Nash song to a Black Sabbath song to whatever song. You know, they would just mix it up. So you always had an interesting. You weren't like, it wasn't like, oh, this is going to be a bunch of, you know, middle-aged 70s singer-songwriter stuff. It was actually a wide mix of stuff. So, and radio and records was kind of all we had growing up. You know, we didn't have MTV when I was a kid, and we didn't have, you know, a lot of, you know, different stuff. So radio was always like, okay, now we're out of this range, but we can tune into this station as we get over here, and this and that kind of a thing. But radio has become like lowest common, I mentioned this before, lowest common denominator. It's like, what's going to get the most listeners?
Yeah.
People sticking on the radio. And it's, you know, since Clear Channel has basically bought everything, or iHeartRadio has bought everything, it's the same old. I'm surprised we even have DJs still.
Yeah.
Or you know, and now you mentioned personalities. There's so many like DJ personalities that are just, I can't stand them. They're just like
the whole morning,
like the
morning
Breakfast
zoo
Club thing, you know, that whole thing. It's just like, no one cares. You don't have an opinion. You're not.
I guarantee I won't
you
be
think
up
you're famous. You're not.
I won't be up in time to hear you. I promise.
Well, probably
So,
that. Yeah.
Do what you want.
That, you know, like,
Yeah.
I just saw wear hoodies on a billboard. You know, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Anyway, now I'm getting angry.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, it's
Coffee's kicking in
it's
now.
how we were raised. You know, we were listening to it. We had in God, what was it? In Dublin, we had BLB, Bray Local Broadcasting, which was just down the bay from where I lived in Killiney, and it was a rock with Bach, and he's the worst DJ voice. Actually, his voice wasn't bad. He just this next one is by Anthrax, and it's caught in a mosh, you know, and we'd call in, and childhood friend of mine, still a good friend of mine today, Barry Dunphy, he would call in and he would write these scripts. Barry's hilarious, and he would write these scripts for this guy to read on air, on BLB, on radio. It was our metal hour or metal whatever it was, and we get to hear all these songs on the radio. But he would read Barry's, and of course, and he wrote these very, very funny requests, you know, and he put everybody's name in there, and he'd put everybody had an alias, but there was, you know, so you knew who he was talking about. We knew who he was talking about. We would just die laughing at not only Barry's genius paragraphs that he would send in, but he also the DJ would have so much trouble trying to narrate, you know, this, or, you know, just to get this request on. It was just.
Now, was this a real radio station, or was it a pirate thing?
That's a good question. It may have been a pirate radio station. You would probably pirate because back then.
Because when we were there last, it was like BBC One, BBC Two, BBC Three.
Oh yeah,
and then
This
a couple channels out of Dublin, and and they were. But it's funny thing was, like, they would have like two Dublin channels, and you'd go from one to the other, and they would be playing the same exact thing. Like, they have different commentators, but then like the music was the same. You're just like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah. And again, Billy Connolly, you know, arguably one of the best stand-up comedians ever, tells a great story of being in Dublin, and he called the taxi. I'm not telling the joke. I'm just the radio topic. But he gets in the taxi, and there's a wonderful Irish song playing, and Billy's an incredible musician. Not only a wonderful stand-up, but he's a great musician, and he started out as a folk singer before he got into comedy. But he was in the taxi on the way to the show, and it's a fantastic song, and he's but it's a little bit modern and whatnot. And he asked the taxi driver, he said, is this Planksty or is this one of these bands? And the driver says, I don't know. I don't usually work Friday nights. So, you know, so there are many, many different ways that could have gone.
That's funny.
But the thing being, yes, you can hear the same song on the different channels. And that's why we you're saying soft spot for radio. That's why we lived for radio in those times, because you just get to hear the songs, and you also get to hear the stuff that you can't get. Our the cellar in Dublin where we'd get our records and our tapes and stuff like that. They couldn't get Amazon to overnight you the things. So you're waiting for weeks. Sure. Not as bad as a lot of the places in Europe, and friends of mine from all over the world would tell me that one friend of mine from Morocco would tell me that he would wait, that they would have to wait years sometimes for these records to arrive, and they couldn't, there's just stuff that, and he's the biggest music aficionado. I mean, just in terms of genres and bands and all this. Mm-hmm. So that's why radio was, when you said soft spot, I absolutely.
Well, for back, not now.
Yeah,
but
not
when
exactly.
I was a kid, radio was everything,
Yeah.
It's funny. In Houston, though, we used to complain about radio in the 80s. I think, that Clear Channel thing was starting to happen already by that point.
Things are getting homogenized.
There just wasn't any, we had K-True and we had KPFT, but the problem with those two stations were KPFT is still true. Sometimes you get good stuff. Sometimes you tune in and it's just like a political interviews stuff. When you're 16, 15, you don't care about that kind of crap. And then K-True, the quintessential K-True DJ, they play like 5 or 6 songs in a row or 10 songs, and they come in and go, that was by something. And
you're like, calm down. Yeah.
Every now and then there'd be some really cool stuff, but also if you didn't live in the inner city, Houston, the K-True signal was really weak. So if you lived more than 6 miles away from campus, because that's where the transmitter was back in those days, I think, somewhere in the center of town, you were lucky to be able to get the K-True signal at all.
Stations, unless you're on campus, you don't really get it.
And then besides that, we had 93Q and 101 KLOL, and 101 was cool sometimes. It really depended who was DJing, and that was kind of cool that actually the DJ did matter back then, because they still had control over what they're playing to a certain extent, anyway.
Yeah, Outlaw Dave still going.
Yeah.
Still, he's still doing his thing.
But it wasn't going to be. It still wasn't. It was just going to be classic rock. It wasn't going to be anything.
Nothing groundbreaking.
Nothing. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And to hear, and when I was a kid, to hear new any kind of metal on radio was unheard of. You know, although my sister said one time, she's like, "Oh, I heard a new Dio song." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Of course, it was like midnight on some channel. It was like after hours, like." Some guy pulled out, here's the new Last in Line record. Let's play the song, kind of a thing, that kind of thing. I'm just like, to find that stuff, it was so hard. And then we'd have to, although my dad sold records and tapes in his store, he was only kind of getting he had a younger gal working, and he would say, you just order, whatever's in the top 40 that you think people are going to want to buy. So even then, we were still getting. You could ask her to order whatever you wanted, but for what they were selling in the store was still your top 20 kind of stuff. So whatever that was. So for us, when we used to go out of town to bigger towns that had record stores that had more variety, we would go nuts. We would save our money and run the record store and just dig through those bins to find the latest whatever you wanted to find, and you found cool stuff there. But I don't know where I was going with that. But
well, the Clear Channel and the Clear Channel, the iHeartRadio, all these big stations now. A few years back, I did some radio ads, and I went into to these studios to cut to the radio, to the offices, and boy, talk about a miserable existence. You expect it being radio and it being, you expect it to be, kind of a big fun atmosphere and
like WKRP,
anything.
Yeah,
and it's not like it's cutthroat. It's bare bone. It's the marca or the Squire copy on the wall, the Squire guitar, the $50 guitar with the signature on on the glass case. Just not exactly the opposite of what you think you're going to.
Right,
is where and because they're they're selling airtime. And who's listening to the radio now? Not I.
Exactly.
So it's
Yep. That's the other thing I missed because of we didn't want to listen to the radio all the time back then. We had to make tapes to listen to.
Yeah,
That's John.
Yeah,
John Mania.
And now that's gone now too because we've got playlists and Pandora, and things like that.
You can make your own playlist if you want to.
Oh yeah. I know. Yeah. It's just not the same.
It
it's not the same as making tapes.
No, I know. Making tapes was kind of a fun thing. Like you had to think about the order and
and it was an endeavor. Like it took some time. Took a whole afternoon sometimes. Sometimes days to come back to it. It was like a project. I always really enjoyed it because it was like, to me, it was like you were kind of practicing for, laying out a record, like you're changing the running order of stuff. And like, what if this song was on this album or, that type of
Making
thing.
a cool set list or something like that.
Yeah.
That can never happen.
And I didn't like wasting any space in the tape. Like, so if there was like 30 seconds on one side, I'd try to figure out something to fill it up with, like a little bit of talk from an interview disc I had or some silly stuff.
I remember one time I made a AC/DC tape of a bunch of obviously AC/DC songs, and I did a top 20. Hey, this is Eric C. He was talking about this.
Cool.
And here's our top. Here's our number 20 on our list. This is whatever the song was, and here's our number 1 AC/DC song. It's Back in Black. Yeah, and then play the song.
Did you like? There was a period where if there was a song I liked, I would wait. I'd sit by the radio waiting for it to come on, and then I'd pick up my tape recorder and just hold it up.
I've done that. Yeah, I've done that in the car before. Because like I say, we used to go to the bigger towns. They'd have better radio stations, and there was one. The heck was it? Rock 101 out of Manchester, New Hampshire. And when you get close to Concord, which is the capital city, you could pick it up. And on the weekend, they do rock blocks. 3 songs from each band from like Friday night through Saturday. And we were driving down on a Friday night, and it was Ram Band doing Black Betty. I love that song. So I remember like grabbing my little realistic cassette player and hitting record and holding up to the speaker. Nobody talk. Yeah. Kind of a thing. Listening to it for hours. Oh, listen to crazy drums and stuff like that. So ridiculous.
I used to do that. I used to record Johnny Carson off the TV sometimes too, or the Smothers Brothers. I used to love that show when I was a kid. That type of thing.
Anyway. See, kids, you got it so easy.
Yeah.
So easy. You can just type in Smothers Brothers and be unimpressed with what we really enjoyed when we were kids.